Hello, everyone. I'm getting the poll ready. I'll have that for you momentarily.
All right. Hope everybody's day is going well. We have a couple topics to address. And then we'll have a weekly tip presented by Alicia. It's her favorite topic. And then Emma will do a presentation on a style guide on headline hierarchy. Topics I just want to go over. Starting Monday, there's going to be a Powerball drawing. Starting on Monday nights. I'm going to get those added to the template, but if they're not on there Monday night, please add a Powerball drawing for your pages. And then the other item is column sigs in the library. They're black and white. Please reach out to an editor and see if you can get a color version of that. So when we all our column sigs are up to snuff with our style guide. And with that, I guess I'll throw it to Alicia.
All right. So I am starting off our new round of presentations with one of my personal pet peeves. So I know you're all excited for this. Erin doesn't have her camera on, but I can tell she's laughing already. So I just launched the poll. And I will present this here for you. So as you may know, my pet peeve is bumping heads. Bumping heads is when the headlines run into each other. It's bad, and it makes me cry. This is a more extreme example of it because the headline fonts are the same and they're approximately the same size. So that makes it even worse. But, you know, anytime that two headlines are just right next to each other, even if they're different sizes, even if they're different fonts, it's still bumping heads. I still don't like it. Yes, Michael set up some of our skeletons so that that's how they're set up. And we're going with that because I've been completely outvoted. But either way, I still want to go through this. So it's information you all have. And we just discuss the ways that you can easily avoid it. And later on, when Michael upsets me over something, then I'll make him redo all of the skeletons so none of them bump. So I'm just going to go through some simple ways that with the same story and information that you can change it so the heads no longer bump. So, and of course, my thing's not working. There you go. Okay, so the first option is just to make one of the headlines different decks and move the photo up. So now the headline interrupts the two photos. As you can see in this one, when you read through the way the eye wants to, a lot of the times when you're reading, your eye will skip over the hairline in between these. So you would just read this and think the headline was Dread Pirate, Robert's back, local man prepared to die, which doesn't make any sense. So when you do it this way, it gives it more separation and tells you that between the two stories, they're definitely different things. Another way to do it would be to, you know, make that other photo bigger and put it on top so that the second headline goes down because of course the words in a headline don't always break easily that you can shift it over to one deck. So this would be another way to do that. You could put a pulled quote or something like that at the top. So, you know, in this case, just put the quote up there. And then, you know, that's another design element, another point of entry for the readers, which is always great. And it separates these two stories. And on a side note, we are still working on picking new pulled quotes. So if you have a pulled quote option that you would like us to consider, send that to us. And this one, you know, this one you could use where if you don't have the room to change the size of one of the photos or anything like that, you don't have a good quote that you can move to above the headline. If you just put a label head over one of these, you know, if it's not about pirates, it could be, you know, Wilmer City Council or, you know, anything like that. Just a little something. So then again, it just creates that visual separation so things do not run into each other. As I said, these are these two headlines are the same size. The font size is the same size, which just in general is a problem for headline hierarchy. And so a way to separate these even better is to make sure that the headlines are different sizes. So as you can see here, we left one of them the size they were, and the other one is smaller, goes to 2 lines. And then the even better option would be to not only do that, but also to change one of the photo sizes so that, again, it makes the 2 elements compete against each other even less. Anytime that we can use our design to tell the readers, this is the most important thing on the page, and then this, that's always a great idea. So having a bigger photo, not only just as a focal point for the page, is good design and helps draw the readers, but also tells the readers, read this story first, because this sword guy is more interesting than this pirate guy. And then the headline being bigger tells them the same thing. So we're using the design to signal to the readers what they should be doing first and second. Whereas, in this initial one, these both, they have the exact same weights. Neither one of these says to the reader, I should read this first. And when they've done eye tracking studies, when a reader comes to a page like this, because there's nothing that tells their eye what to do first, they just go, okay, and then they flip to the next page. And if people aren't going to read the work that we do, then it was kind of not worth our time to do it. So always be keeping that in mind. Don't bump heads. I'll make Michael redo all the skeletons later. Just a short, I have an awful lot of pet peeves. I could do a weekly series on my pet peeves, but I won't because I want you all to like me. So any questions on this? I'll share with you the poll results. 5 of you said bumping heads are the worst. 6 of you said they're the worst. 4 of you said they're even worse than that. And only 2 of you said they're worse than the worst. So I'm glad that you all agree with me that they're some version of the worst. So all right. And as always, if you have any questions on that, you know where to reach me. I love to talk about bumping heads. It makes me happy. So I'm available anytime you want to talk about it. I do want to just throw out here before we move on that the pod is really picking up momentum. The first papers that the pod takes over will be on September 8th. So that is the Wednesday after Labor Day. So that Wednesday for Thursday's e-edition, some properties will transition over to the pod. An email will be sent out next week with the order in which we are making those transitions. But we've grouped the publications into 4 pub groups based on regions. And we'll be doing one group at a time every 2 weeks. So the 8th, the 20th, the 4th of October, and the 18th of October. So we'll be making the transition pretty quickly because there's a lot of redundant work involved as long as we have some papers not on the new system. So we'll be moving quickly on that. And I'm very excited about it. Things are coming together really well, and it's going to make all your jobs so much easier. I'm excited for it. I hope you're excited as well. All right. Joe, are you taking this back? Oh, Emma? Okay. Go, Emma, go.
I'm just going to go ahead and get into headline hierarchy, which is really great, with Alicia's presentation today. It kind of goes hand in hand. A lot of things that I was going to say were very similar to examples that she had, and she had way better visual examples than I did. So we'll just go with that. But one of the main reasons why I wanted to go over this, the headline hierarchy today, was we've been seeing a lot of pages where you're laying out the stories, whether, in order of priority, but we're not seeing that hierarchy on a page. So like Alicia said, a reader is just kind of looking at the page, it's kind of blah, and they just move on. So we want to make sure you guys are taking that time and you're designing the page first. Like, don't always go with what you're given the first time around. And I'm not saying that every single headline when you're given should change. But if something needs to stand out more and all your headlines are very similar in size and you find you have a little bit more white space on the rail, you know, instead of tracking out that story, can you make that headline a little bit bigger? And if that means cutting down a word or adding a word to make that happen, you know, do that. Take that time and do that. I'm going to share my screen here. These are a few examples of what we're seeing. Again, with the reason why we wanted to share this today. Obviously, everything Alicia said was important, but this is the main reason why. It's because we're laying out stories, you know, in order. This is the bottom story, but it has the largest headline on the bottom. And visually towards the page, your eye immediately goes to that very large headline, and you're kind of ignoring everything up here, especially since these don't even have any art with them. And this story on the bottom, which may be filler, maybe it's something not even related to the local news at top, and this was their filler. Now this filler is taking precedence over maybe local news. Maybe there's something going on, there's a brief, there's something here, there's a column. So something that you can do to avoid that, you can just imagine this goes all the way to the bottom. But even if it didn't, don't be afraid to use plug ads. That's what they're there for. Another thing would be to change the size of your column width. I had it at 5/6, and I would be able to make my photo larger. Maybe you're not able to do that and you only have a couple of inches to fill. Again, don't be afraid to utilize those pull quotes. And if something isn't recommended in the Google Doc, reach out to an editor and say, do you have a preference? You know, I need to fill a couple inches. I'm going to use a pull quote to fill the space. And if they don't have anything, obviously feel free to pick one that works best for your design. Because ultimately what we want visually is to work from largest headline at the top, smallest at the bottom, just so it's, again, the hierarchy. But, you know, Michael brought up a really good point in our hub manager meeting. Just that's not always how the page lays out. And I think this is a really good example of that, where it breaks up, not always like a layered cake, but you're breaking items up in a 2-column and then a 4-column. And maybe this is a third story instead of a brief headline. That's another bold headline, you know, and you're just trying to fit them all in the space that you have. But instead of having this headline the same size, you're asking the copy desk to add a word that visually is smaller going down. So something is taking hierarchy on that page, that it's not all the same tone. In our style guide, it does note a 6-point difference, because that's visually going to help when working down a page, that a 6-point difference in a headline. So if the top headline is 30 points, obviously moving down, it should be 6 points smaller than the one above it. So that's a good rule of thumb to use as you're working down your page. And again, inside pages should not be any larger than 48 points. We've kind of come across a few of those also, where we're seeing where headlines are basically being used to fill space versus what they're being used for. You know, there's no reason in having a 3-column wide 4-deck headline at 50 point when it's about a court related item, something not that needs that much attention drawn to it. And then for Rochester, they not only use size, but they also use fonts. I don't need to go into great detail on that, but just keep in mind that they really like to focus on contrast. They really like to use size, but also using the different weights. So maybe using a sans serif bold on something across the top that's, you know, really priority news, and maybe they have a column or two along the bottom to finish off the page. You could use something like a light serif font for the bottom 2 stories, or a serif light and a serif bold, just to set that apart to have some really nice contrast on the page. Just another visual example, again, of the layered cake example that we're seeing, where the first headline is smaller than the large. In this case, take the time and ask the copy desk to adjust that for you. I think the easiest way to do that, to find out what you need, is just sizing this what you need it as. Maybe it's something that's really long that you know these last 4 or 5 words would be better used as a subhead. Adjust. 1 second. You know, and a lot of them usually are okay with that happening. So make sure that it's working on your page. Yes, that's going to work visually. This is a stronger news headline now. That's going to go across the top of the page. Boom, you know, you'll only have to change that one thing and adjust layout to include the rest of your story versus having to change both headlines on the page. Now visually, that has more of a presence at the top of the page. Or if you're tight on space, sometimes sizing down the second headline and then letting that text box out, and then you'll know, okay, I need this filled out, and that's when you would leave your yellow box note for the copy desk. And Michael had a small note about this, about headlines. So.
I have a question for you first, Emma, because you just blew my mind. How are you dragging the text box and making the text bigger at the same time? What's the short key for that?
Oh, want to know my secrets, do you?
Yeah,
when you have a text box selected, if you hold Control Shift, that's going to make it bigger and larger.
All right, did not know that.
Zoom in. Yeah, so instead of just making the text box bigger and smaller, Control and Shift, and then click and drag.
Wow. All right. Thanks.
But be careful, it does get away from you sometimes. I don't know, InDesign's weird, where sometimes it jumps and you're like, your cursor is here on the edge of the page, but the actual text box is like 500 yards to the right of this artboard. So just pay attention when you're clicking and dragging. But it's pretty quick little tool. Alicia's got her hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that we note that the 6 points difference between fonts or between the headlines is when they are in the same font. If they're in different fonts, then you need to pay more attention to it than that. For example, this font in bold, if you do that font but not bold, 6 points larger, they're going to look the same size on the page. So that's a general rule of thumb, but not an absolute. And some of our features fonts also look smaller as well. So be thinking of those things as well.
Awesome. And then Michael had a note just to kind of piggyback on the headline hierarchy in terms of skeletons.
Yep. I'm going to share my screen. So I just wanted to quick go over some of this stuff. Basically, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take a little bit of the guesswork on some of our more simpler pages so that you guys can kind of crank these out really fast. The yellow parts are where ads would be. You know, I have some unconventional ad stacks, but I'm just trying to see what I can take into consideration before we get into the pod, because there's going to be a bunch of questions on a bunch of different papers, and there's going to be relatively 1 or 2 people in charge. So any question that we can kind of cut down or get worked out in advance, I think will be helpful as we get going. So I've made a couple of inside page skeletons that we will roll out when the pod comes. I've already made these for Wilmer, but they kind of fell a little bit by the wayside. So hopefully when the pod stuff starts, we can get that going. I can zoom in a little, but I'll just kind of show you. So like I have the hierarchy built into this. I know that when I design pages, it's hard to do it in order of the budget and then go back and make sure that all of the headlines meet the hierarchy. So I'm trying to see if I can get that fixed for you guys before you ever start the page. That way, like I said, it just won't be a lot of the questions. It'll take some of that frustration off and those, in my opinion, conflicting directives. So, yep. So just like, for example, if you look at this one, top one's 42, middle one's 35, bottom one's 25 as far as headline sizes. So that's kind of already taken into consideration for you and already done. I'm just going to kind of give you a quick glance at a couple of the other ones that I have. So I have ones for half pages. We'll just zoom past the bumping head one so Alicia doesn't see that. Yep. So similar to here, these are 10-point difference in a half page. This will also help with, just kind of how many words we can generally fit on a page so that it can help the pod provide the stories for you in more manageable lengths. If they have photos, if they don't have photos, hopefully it can basically just help as we get going, take some of the guesswork away from us and have a little bit of that work done up front for us so we can push things out a little bit faster, still keeping the quality and taking away some of the, just the stress and the question and answer that we got going. So if you have any questions for those, you can let me know. If you have any interest in looking at them, they're on the designer site, but right now they're under Wilmer inside pages. That will be switched at some point, but they're all up there right now. So thanks.
I think that's all we have for the meeting today. Does anybody have any questions about what we went over? Mark?
That's a good point.
Yeah, we should. Mark's brings up that occasionally stories have been presented as centerpieces and the original papers are being linked as secondary stories. So you have a three-word headline for a secondary story. Yeah, they should be adjusting that. They should be rewriting these headlines. So if you're seeing that, just let us know. We'll reach out to the copy desk.
Yeah, that's one of those things that the pod change will help eliminate that issue.
Yep.
Our pod editors are going to be more focused on print production, so they'll be doing a better job of matching headline lengths and skeletons and such. Okay. Does anybody want to just hang out after the meeting and talk about how much you hate bumping heads? I'm available.
I'm still shocked that Michael put bumping heads on those skeletons.
I'm not mad, Michael. I'm just disappointed.
Here we go. All right, go ahead.
My faith has been shook in you, Michael.
That's the fact that you had Eddie to begin with. I'm happy with. I'll take it.
Okay. The rest of you don't have to stay here while I chastise Michael. You can go, but I'll be available. Like I said, if you want to just talk about headline things, I'm always here.
All right. Bye, everybody.
See you. You guys swear.